In 1931, an unsuspecting family living on a secluded farm in the Isle of Man came across a fantastical creature. It resembled a mongoose, but had huge human-like hands and yellow fur. Most notably, the animal could speak. Jeff, as it named itself, knew several languages and liked to discuss theology and politics. It claimed to have magical powers and said of itself, quote, "I'll split the atom. I am the fifth dimension. I am the eighth wonder of the world." The talking mongoose's existence could never be verified by investigators of the paranormal, nor by scientists. Some believed that the family's young daughter was doing ventriloquism or that they were all suffering from some type of collective hysteria. However, nobody could prove that it was all a hoax. A couple of people outside the family met Jeff, and many others heard him talk. The Dalby Spook, as it came to be known, became a fascination for villagers and journalists alike. Before the First World War, James Irving used to have a successful piano repair business. But the economic chaos after the conflict left him only with enough money to move his wife Margaret and his 13-year-old daughter Vori to Cashin's Gap Farm on the Isle of Man. The isolated farmhouse, located over a mile away from Dalby Village, had no electricity or running water. In the autumn of 1931, the family started hearing scratching sounds and vocal noises coming from a small gap between the stone wall and the house's wooden paneling. The Irvings thought the sounds sometimes resembled a ferret or a baby. Eventually, they saw in the farmyard an animal that resembled a weasel or a mongoose. It was the size of a small rat with yellow fur and a bushy tail. For some time, the Irvings thought it was one of the mongooses introduced to the farm in 1912 by a farmer who intended to control the rabbit population. However, the presence of the animal was eerie for the family. It liked blowing, spitting, and growling in the walls during the night, keeping the Irvings awake. Although the creature had eluded the humans for a while, it one day approached young Vori and kept close to her from then on. The family temporarily named it Jack. The sounds the animal made started changing over time. In the beginning, it would mimic other farm animals. But shortly after approaching the family, the creature started mimicking human speech. Soon, it was repeating nursery rhymes and speaking in English. Once it learned to speak, the creature explained the nature of his existence to the Irvings. He said his real name was Jeff, and he was an intelligent mongoose born in Delhi, India on June 7, 1852. According to the family, it said, quote, "I am the ghost in the form of a weasel, and I shall haunt you." Jeff was playful and affectionate. It learned several songs and would often serenade the family. It also took on a guardian angel role at the farm and would let the Irvings know every time a person or a dog approached the house. As if speaking in English wasn't enough, the creature surprised the family while using words in French, German, Yiddish, Spanish, Flemish, and Hebrew. It also liked bringing the family the latest gossip in town. Jeff could also be rude and disruptive. Once he said to the family, quote, "I am a freak. I have hands and I have feet. If you saw me, you'd faint. You'd be petrified, mummified, turned into stone or a pillar of salt." The creature was used to catch rabbits and scare off mice as a way of earning its keep. The Irvings would feed it biscuits, chocolates, and bananas. Even though they thought the animal was eerie, they never considered it supernatural. Vari Irving took a couple of photographs of the creature, but none can be seen clearly. One of them shows its human-like hands peeking from behind the wood paneling. In others, its figure seems to shift between a squirrel and a weasel. At first, Jeff latched on to Vari. One night she slept in her parents' room and the creature announced, quote, "I'll follow her wherever you move her." But as years went by, Jeff became closer to James Irving. Both would engage in discussions about theology and politics and shared many interests. Jeff had a creepier attitude with Margaret Irving. It would spy on her as she got undressed and once crept on her bed in the middle of the night to whisper in her ear, quote, "I like you, Maggie, and I want you to like me." Although an elusive presence, Jeff made itself known to some other villagers. The creature enjoyed traveling to the town of Peel, where it would hide in the bus station and spy on drivers. It would also steal sandwiches and leave behind the paper wrapping. The villagers came to dub him the Dalby Spook and complained that, quote, "This animal, or whatever it is, knows a damn sight too much." Jeff was shy and mostly kept to the gap between the wall and the house's wooden paneling. However, the Irvings spoke freely about him to other people in town. Visitors to the house often heard it speak, and two of them actually got to see it. One of them was Arthur Morrison, a family friend who spent one night in the farmhouse. The man was reportedly skeptical of the animal's existence and planned to prove that it was all a hoax. However, as soon as he arrived, Jeff came out and said, quote, "Hello, call me Jeff. I am an earthbound spirit. Before I saw you, I was going to blow your brains out with a 3D cartridge, but I like you now." Arthur was tormented all night by the creature, which hid under his bed and made noises. At some point in the sleepless night, Jeff asked, quote, "Now do you believe?" Soon, the tales about Jeff reached the ears of journalists. In 1932, a reporter for the Daily Dispatch wrote, quote, "Had I heard a weasel speak? I do not know, but I do know that I have heard today a voice which I should never have imagined could issue from a human throat." Although journalists described the Irvings as sane, responsible people, they reported that the talking mongoose was actually a trick of ventriloquism done by young Vari Irving. Her father, James, wrote several letters to English ghost hunter Harry Price, thinking he could confirm Jeff's existence. On his behalf, Price sent his friend, Captain James MacDonald. Jeff made no sound and didn't show himself to the investigator, who looked behind the walls where the creature usually hid. But the next day, as he was ready to leave, the animal roared, quote, "Who is that bloody man?" MacDonald stayed further that day, during which Jeff threw things at him and screamed. However, the investigator couldn't catch a glimpse of it. Although Margaret tried to convince the animal to talk to the man, it replied, quote, "He's damned well not going to get to know my inferior complex." Before leaving, the captain took a sample of fur presumed to belong to Jeff. Later on, it was discovered that it actually belonged to the farm's dog. In 1935, paranormal investigator Harry Price visited the Cashin's Gap next to Richard S. Lambert, BBC magazine The Listener. But neither man could meet or hear Jeff. After they departed, James Irving sent plasticine with the creature's paw and tooth. These impressions were sent to Reginald Pocock of the Natural History Museum, who couldn't certainly match them to any known animal. However, they seemed similar to a dog's. The Zoological Society found some discrepancies with the samples. However, Jeff's front paws were estimated to measure between 3 and 4 inches long, particularly big for a foot-long creature. This made sense for the Irvings, who said that Jeff had huge human-like hands. But the experts said no animal on Earth could have paws so out of proportion with the rest of its body. They believed that, in reality, the prints had been made with a stick. Before visiting the farm, Price had exposed multiple paranormal hoaxes. Still, he could never conclusively prove that Jeff was a fraud. The investigator couldn't find a reason for the family to lie about the existence of the talking mongoose. And it's hard for anyone to hold a hoax for long before being discovered. Price and Lambert published the book, The Haunting of Cashin's Gap, where they neither denied nor confirmed Jeff's existence. Nandor Fedor, research officer for the International Institute for Psychical Research, also investigated Jeff's case. Like Price, he could never meet the creature, but believed it to be a poltergeist. The parapsychologist initially thought that Jeff could also shift into a cat's shape. However, eventually, he concluded that the creature was a product of James's mind, who was suffering from a split personality. Although visitors were usually accepted at Cashin's Gap, James eventually placed an ad in the newspaper warning that they would only welcome neighbors with appointments. The family also stopped talking to the press, and the curiosity died out. Although harmless, Jeff significantly damaged the life of Vari Irving. Other children in the Isle of Man called her a spook. Local journalists said she was either insane or was a skilled ventriloquist. She could never get married and left the place in 1937. The woman confessed that, while the creature was fascinating, she wished they had never met it. In 1970, she was tracked down by Fate magazine. In an interview, she said, quote, "It was not a hoax, and I wish it had never happened. If my mother and I had our way, we never would have told anybody about it. But Father was sort of wrapped up in it. It was such a wonderful phenomenon that he just had to tell people about it." After Vari left her family, Jeff kept appearing to James Irving until he sold the house to actor Leslie Graham in 1945. The man claimed to the press that he had shot Jeff and showed the corpse of a black and white animal. Cashin's Gap was demolished in 1970, and Jeff was never seen or heard of again. Vari died in 2005, claiming until the end that the talking mongoose hadn't been a hoax.